Okay, since I'm out today, I want to go over the concepts that will be on tomorrow's quiz, and then I will also go through some of the problems from yesterday's worksheet just to make sure you understand that. So one of the first things that will be on the quiz tomorrow is simplifying radicals, and the new piece of that is the fact that we're taking the square root of numbers that have a negative. So for example, maybe negative 144. And then I would break it apart as negative 1 times 144, which the square root of negative 1 is just going to be our I times the square root of 144. This will be 12, and then this square root of negative 1 will become I. So it's problems similar to that. They may be a little bit more involved where you have to break it apart a little bit more, so let me do one little example. So what if I have 2 times the square root of negative 32, something to that effect? So I would break apart first the negative 1, which will be I, of course, and then the largest perfect square of 32 is 16. So it's 16 times 2, just kind of showing you how it would break apart. Then I have the square root of negative 1 times the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. And then this, of course, will be your I, and this will be the square root of 16 is 4. So I'm going to get 4i square roots of 2, but then don't forget the 2 that was out front. I know some of you had questions about this. So the 2 times the 4 would be 8i square roots of 2, and that would be the answer there. So make sure to go back and review the homework that we did on that. You're going to have to do everything with complex numbers that we've done in class. So remember, complex numbers are in the form a plus bi. You have your real component or real part, and then you have your imaginary. And with that, you're going to have to add and subtract. So go back to Tuesday's notes and homework and make sure to look over those types of problems if you to do those. But basically with adding and subtracting, you match the real with real numbers. And then you match the imaginary part with the other imaginary part. So go back and look at Tuesday for that. Then on Wednesday, we learned how to multiply, divide, and simplify powers. And I'm going to do some of those from today or from yesterday's worksheet. And then tonight you're going to finish up the worksheet front and back. You'll do all the evens, check your answers, and then you should be pretty well prepared for the quiz tomorrow. The only other thing is we will have some review of factoring on the quiz. So like factoring, and remember we have learned our new SOAP for the signs. And remember, it's the sum or difference of cubes. So I'll just kind of walk through one real quick. So the basis here would be x cubed plus the base would be 2 cubed. And remember, you have a pattern. You have a binomial, then a trinomial. And the first base will go in the first position. The second base goes in the second position. You take the base and square it. For the first position, you take the base of 2 and square it. 2 squared is 4 for the last position. And then you simply multiply the two bases, 2 and x, together to get the middle term. The signs are S from SOAP is going to be your same, so it's a positive. Opposite means it'll always change. And then always positive. This is always going to be positive, and that's how that would factor. So that's our new factoring, but also make sure to know all of our old factoring. So go over the factoring reviews as well. Okay, and that should get it. I do want to go over some of the questions or some of the problems from yesterday's homework, so I'm going to pull that up. So here I have multiplying, and I'm going to, sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. So here I have multiplying, so I'll do a few of these with you guys. So I'll probably choose some of the harder ones just to make sure from the ones you did yesterday. So let's see. These don't look too bad. Maybe I'll do number 10 with you because it's a little bit more involved. So what I would do with this, I'd recognize I have I cubed, and then I have a binomial minus, and think of it like a 1 here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by distributing. So I cubed times a negative I is negative I to the 4th. Then I cubed times 12 is going to be a positive 12 I cubed. Then again, distribute negative 1 to 3, so multiply, and I get a negative 3. Negative 1 gets distributed to the 7i, and I get minus 7i. So I multiplied everything out, and I need to remember my powers. And I'm going to go over this with you because you needed to see this anyway. So remember, it's I1, and it's positive, negative, negative, positive. And that's just a little memory device for helping you be able to write that out every single time. Now, I to the 4th, I can see here is just a 1. So I'm going to take I to the 4th only. You see I only circle that, and it's going to be replaced with a 1. So it's a negative 1. And I cubed is right here, and I'm going to replace I cubed with a negative I. So 12 times a negative I will be a minus 12I. And then I have minus 3 minus 7i. So this is just back to adding and subtracting, and I'm going to match the reals with the reals. So negative 1 and negative 3 added together is negative 4. Negative 12i added to negative 7i is going to be a negative 19i. So that would be the answer to that one. So that is probably just about as hard as those would get, but you may see one like that on the quiz. And multiplying, I'll do one of these because it's a little bit more involved, and you did it yesterday. And remember I taught you the first times the first, outer, inner, and last, but you can choose to do it using the little grid method or the distributing method. So 5 times 5 is 25. My outer term is a minus 15i. My inner term is a plus 15i. So I see those are going to cancel. My last term is a positive times a negative, making it negative. And then 3i times 3i is 9i squared. The only thing that needs to be replaced is this I squared. Remember, i's are okay. I just can't have an I squared when I'm simplifying down. These cancel. This is a negative 1. So that would make a positive 9 when I multiply those. So it's 25 plus 9, which is going to be 34. So that is the answer to that one. And for ones like number 8, which you're going to do in just a second, I just want to tell you, make sure to kind of think of this negative as the very last step. That's the way I would do it. And then go ahead and multiply these together, and then you could distribute the negative at the last minute. The other way to do it is to distribute the negative into this first binomial only. You don't have to do it to both, so just be into the first, or I would probably wait to the very last step. So those are some more multiplications. I want to go over some of the division because those are a little bit harder. And I want to simplify a power or two with you. So down at the bottom, for example, let's do 22. So here I have I to the 12th. And remember, I'm going to take my exponent and I'm going to divide by 4. Well, this goes evenly. And remember, I went through this pattern with you yesterday. So when you have no remainder, you know that you are where in the position. You know that you're in the 4th spot, okay, so you don't have a remainder. So this is going to be I1, positive, negative, negative. The 4th position is just a 1. So it's going to be 2 times the number 1, which is just 2. So that would be the answer to that one. And let's see, I think that should pretty much do it for you. So just go over these and make sure you check your answers. Now, division, of course, gets a little bit more complicated, but you're still doing the multiplying within the division. Okay, so this first section just wants you to write out the complex conjugate. We talked about that yesterday. So number 1, you should have put 3 plus I. Number 3 should have been 12 plus 11i. Number 5, now this is a good one to go over. Really, this is 0 plus 8i. So you can have no real component or part of your complex number. So if this is the actual complex number, the conjugate would be this, 0 minus 8i, which is really just a negative 8i. So that would be the answer to number 5. So let's do some of these where you have to multiply by complex conjugates. Let's do number 7, just to make sure you get that. So 3 plus 2i over 3 plus 2i. And then the numerator is really just distributing. So 5 times 3 is 15. And then 5 times 2i is 10i. And then the denominator I do have to multiply. First times first is going to give me 9. And then remember when I did my outer and inners yesterday, we know that they're both going to be 6i, but they have opposite signs. So the outers would be positive 6i, the inners would be negative 6i, so I don't really have to multiply those. The last term, negative 2i times a positive 2i, will make for a negative 4i squared. But we do this because we know that I squared is really a negative 1. So I'm going to multiply negative 4 times negative 1, making it 9 plus 4, which is going to be 13. So the final answer is 15 plus 10i over 13. And remember we talked about yesterday that if all three of these numbers that I'm kind of pointing out right now are divisible by the same thing, you can simplify it, but this cannot be simplified anymore. Okay, let's kind of scroll down and see if there's anything else I should probably go over with you. And remember, we talked about yesterday that when you have something, this is called a pure imaginary, and that just means that there's no real component to it, so it's really 0 plus 4i. We're just going to use I over I over I. So when I do 4i times I get 4i squared. And then I would distribute this. Always think about this as in parentheses and distributing. So I times 1 is a negative I. I'm sorry, just an I. And then I times negative I is negative I squared. So the I squared is going to get replaced with a negative 1. So it's I minus a negative 1. So I'll write that out for you. I minus a negative 1. Which is really just going to be I plus 1. So I'm going to write it as 1 plus I. And then the denominator, I'm going to replace the I squared, which is again a negative 1. So that will be a negative 4. So negative 4. And I'm going to write it as the negative out front, 1 plus I. And that would be your answer right there. Okay, so that should do it. And again, I'll be here in the morning if you need to come in and just check your answers and make sure you understand everything. And I will see you tomorrow.